Hey everybody, this is Dina, your dating diva. We're going to discuss what it takes to love well and wisely. And we're going to do that as we review this article called Radical Romance, written by Cathleen Medwick. In the article, she interviews a Dr. Ethel Pearson, who is a psychoanalyst and Columbia University professor who teaches and writes about love. Dr. Pearson helps people understand how love can turn their lives around, though not necessarily in the way they expect. And this is what Dr. Pearson has to say. She says, I think romantic love is one of the great change agents. We come to know ourselves in a different way when we fall in love, and whatever happens to that relationship, we are forever changed. We know something we didn't know before. We discover capacities that we didn't think we had. And of course, when you're in love, you're a totally different person. You're happier. You smile more. It's just a natural energy boost. Ask any of your friends, and they can tell, they can tell you that you are a totally different person when you're in a relationship and when you're not in a relationship. But she says that people should not judge failed love affairs as failed experiences or wasted time, but as a part of the growth process. Something does not have to end well for it to have been one of the most valuable experiences of a lifetime, which is very true. I've been a widow since the age of 33, and although that relationship didn't end ideally, that relationship taught me a lot. It helped me grow. It made me mature, and I believe it made me a better person in the end. So yeah, definitely. You can't consider all relationships failed or wasted time. She says that most people cling to the idea that love has to have a happy ending. When a relationship breaks up, they feel cheated of their future. And we've all felt like that. When you break up with somebody after a few months, you're like, oh my gosh, all the things we could have done. I can't believe I wasted all that time. And they say that if they've never fallen in love, they become desperately afraid that they will never fall in love, which is not true. You cannot control who you fall in love with. You can't control when you fall in love. And that's just human nature. It's not up to you. And she says that you should always take something from the relationship. You should focus on the lesson instead of the heartbreak, which is hard when you're in the middle of it, of course. Accept and appreciate the relationship for what it taught you and what it brought you. And she says that people can love more than once, which of course is true. Love happens to people of all ages because one's internal life changes as well as one's opportunities. I don't see love as something that if you don't get it, by the time you're 30, cross it off the list. And I think women are guilty of this more so than men. We feel that if we get to a certain age and we're not married or we're not in a certain status, that it's never going to happen, that we're going to grow old all by ourselves. We're never going to have kids. We're never going to get married. We're going to be, 80 and alone. But that's not necessarily true. Like I said, you don't control who you fall in love with or when you fall in love. She says that when you're a therapist, people come to you in anguish about a love affair that's gone sour, a marriage that's gone wrong, and some people worry that they'll never be able to let go enough to love anybody. And she said the reason is usually buried in their childhood and some fear of being found wanting or in parental disapproval. So if your parents never gave you praise and they never thought anything you did was good enough, you take that with you into your relationships unless you learn how to not take that into take it into the next relationship. She says people may also find it hard to love if they've been abused by their parents. And at some point you have to realize that the abuse you suffered as a child does not define you. It's not you. That is your past. And you need to not take it into your future and into your relationships. So at some point, it may sound harsh, but you need to let it go. You kind of need to get over it. You need to, grow up. Or it says they were over-monitored and they feel that any relationship means being imprisoned. Someone may have had parents who were miserably mismatched and says, I'll never let myself be in the situation that my mother or father was in. To get married is to give away their autonomy, and they're just not going to do it. So our capacity to love often depends on having a good enough childhood. Not a great one, just good enough. So what does it take for a love affair to flourish? And can you ever undo the effects of a really disastrous childhood? Well, Dr. Pearson says yes. She says through experience, maturity, and sometimes through therapy. Some people go away from home for college or a job and find out that not everybody is like the family they grew up in. What's great is that we can relearn, recondition, and see other possibilities. And I'm a witness to that. That's very true. You know, being a military wife, I've lived in different parts of the country. I've lived in 4 or 5 different cities, and each city is very different. It's a huge cultural shock no matter where you are. So luckily, you know, human nature is that we can recondition ourselves, we can adapt, and we can learn from our surroundings. We don't have to stay, you know, stagnant. We're not stuck where we were when we grew up. So in reference to independence, how do you preserve your hard-won sense of self and still experience the enraptured merging that most of us see as an essence of romance? Because when you become a couple, you want to be considered one. When you get married, they say you're one. So how do you maintain your sense of self and still be a couple, still be one? And she says all love has this internal dynamic between togetherness and oneness, independence and separateness. I think that for a love affair to flourish, there have to be independent interests that can be shared as well as interests that are the same. Intense physical passion waxes and wanes. Once you've had it, you can always get it back. But what sustains you in between is having something that interests you both enough that you can share it, talk about it, or do it together. So basically, beauty fades. Your sex drive is going to fade. You have to have something to talk about. You have to have something in common for those times when, you know, that stuff is gone, or else it's going to be very uncomfortable. There's going to be a lot of silence. And where's that relationship going to go from there? You know, is it going to last? Who knows? You have to be able to sustain your own life, but be prepared to allow your partner into your world, and they have to be prepared to let you into theirs. You don't have to be up under each other 24/7. You know, we all know you're in love. We all know you're in love. It's okay to maintain your own life and maintain that sense of self, but still be in a relationship. And this next section, she's talking about arguments. In any good relationship, there have to be bursts of anger and disagreement. But those become a part and parcel of the journey. You're going to fight. You're going to fight about silly stuff. You're going to fight about the remote being in the wrong place. You're going to fight about the mayonnaise jar being on the wrong shelf in the refrigerator. You're going to fight about his socks on the floor. You know, he's going to fight about, you know, your bra on the floor in the bathroom. You know, just silly stuff. But you have to be able to get past that. You have to know that just because you argue does not necessarily mean the relationship is over. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to agree to disagree. Basically, you don't have to agree on everything, and that's just a part of the passion. You know, there are couples out there who flourish in that dynamic. They need that passion to keep their fires burning. They could break up and make up 3-4 times a month, but that's just that's their dynamic. That's how they keep their fires burning, and you know, that's okay. It doesn't mean that your life is over. It doesn't mean that you can't go on. But it also says that this can be a tall order if you're already one of the walking wounded. If you grew up with parents whose fights were soul shattering, relationships are a code word for pain. Giving up that preconception can feel like a giant leap into the dark. It says you can and you will find someone who can love you. You just have to be able to take the risk, let go, and love them back. People are so different in their ability to let go, they need to know in the back of their minds that if it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. If I sorrow for anyone, it's for someone who has never rolled the dice, rather than for someone who has rolled the dice and lost a hand or two. Better to love and lost than to never have loved at all, right? So this is Dr. Pearson's ideas of what it takes to love well and wisely. So if you want to look up that article, again, it's called Radical Romance, and it's written by Cathleen Medwick. So hopefully I will see you guys next time, and thanks for tuning in. Bye.